Hello and welcome to the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee. I'll get Councillor Davidson to start the day with a karakia.
Ka tukuna te karakia. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I roaru, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tō ai, te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, homia, huia, tae kia.
Kia ora, thanks Mike. We've now got apologies. So we've got apologies for lateness from Councillor McDonald and Councillor Scandrett and Councillor Galloway for early departure. Do I have a mover for those? Pauline, second to Aaron. All in favour?
Aye.
Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. We've got one declaration of interest for today, and that's Councillor Coker for item 11. Not all of item 11 though, is it? Just one of the groups. Could you flick the name of the group through to Simone and you can vote on the rest? Just abstain from that one. Yep, that'd be great. Any other declarations? If anything pops up during the meeting, then just let us know. Thanks. Confirmation of previous minutes. Do I have a mover for those? Jimmy, second to Andrew. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? No, clear that carried. Thank you very much. Right, now we move to public forum. Do we have Mark online? No, not yet. So, is it possible to move on? Yep, so we'll flick back to public forum once Mark gets here. So next we have a deputation from the Cancer Society of New Zealand on our item on the smoke-free 2025 implementation plan. So if you could, that's it, presentations up on the screen. Bridget, are you able to just flick your video off briefly while the Cancer Society put theirs on? Because they had theirs on earlier. Are they still there? Yep, there we go. Oh, just like that. Fantastic. Welcome. Welcome online to talk to us today. You'll know that with deputations that you've got 10 minutes to speak to us, and that includes any question time.
Ko hikarangi toku maanga, ko wāku toku awa, ko harauta toku waka, ko hini mauri toku marae, ko wharikahika toku hapu, ko Ngāti Porou toku iwi, ko Teresa Butler toku ingoa. Kia ora mana wahine toa, Mayor Leanne Dalzell and councillors. My name is Teresa Butler, smoke-free support practitioner for Te Pō Waitanga ki Ototahi Trust and Te Hā Waitaka. I'm also a member of the Ototahi Māori Women's Welfare. I'm from the Cancer Society to support the Smoke-Free Action Plan Progress Report on the agenda here today. As Smoke-Free members, to acknowledge our partnership with the Christchurch and that this. I would like to introduce our latest piece of smoke-free advocacy, our Smoke-Free Community Voices film. As a stop smoking practitioner, I see the harm caused by tobacco on a daily basis. Smoking is not done. People are still taking up smoking and are still addicted and free. We wanted to encourage some community members to share their feelings on tobacco with decision makers as the government moves closer to achieving smoke-free Aotearoa action plan. I'm one of the stories featured alongside other heartfelt stories. Please play the film.
I've been smoking since I was about 11 years old.
Probably we'll say age 13, 14.
I started smoking when I was 21.
I was with my peer grouping and somebody was smoking and they offered me one. Something as simple as that.
My mother and father both smoked.
That 11-year-old child in me had no idea that that would become a lifestyle.
They've asked me lots to stop. Yeah. And I have tried.
The number of times that they have actually, asked us to, my husband and I, to give up smoking, that if we loved them, we would not smoke. Yeah.
It does hit you home when your own son sees you with a cigarette, and the words that come out of his mouth was, "You're going to die, Dad."
He was about three years old at a crash, and I went to pick him up after crash, and then the teacher there was saying, "Oh look, Teresa, we got all the kids to draw a picture of what their mum does during the day." Here's me sitting outside with the phone, me talking on the phone with the smoke. And that's what he drew to his teachers. I thought, that's what my son sees. That's what his mum does all day, yeah. But that didn't stop me from smoking, though. And that's what gets to me, is that it didn't stop me.
I'm asthmatic. All my children are asthmatic. I have a heart condition, which I've been waiting for a year to have surgery. And they won't do it unless I'm smoke-free.
I'm finding it difficult to breathe now, and I also got like other health complications.
I've gone days without food just to have that cigarette.
I have nursed loved ones dying of cancer and helped bury lots of loved ones.
This is Mum, Frances Mamai Werehiko Butler, and here she is 72, and she's with my daughter. This is Taika. So she had COPD for 10 years, and then on her death certificate here, it says cause of death, and it's tobacco smoking, 50 plus years. So tobacco took her life.
Dad gave up when he was about 45. He saw a set of black lungs on the tally and threw them in the fire and never went back. And Mum couldn't get off it, and I lost her because of it.
I watched my mother look after my sister's kids, and being at their rugby games, netball, all of these milestones. My mother will never do that with my daughter. She'll never do that with her.
I don't think cigarettes should be available in places like dairies, service stations. I mean, you can't buy alcohol from a dairy, from that corner dairy. So why should you be able to buy a product like that? That is deadly, that's being sold next to your lollies.
Those ones that are coming through that are soon to be turning 18, it'd be wonderful if they could never purchase cigarettes in their lifetime.
It would be amazing to not have access to cigarettes for 18-year-olds and less.
Our people, our youngsters, ought never be able to buy cigarettes. And the only way that can happen is that if it's not there on the market. You take them out of those shops, you take them out of those garages, you take tobacco out of this country.
I want the sales of tobacco stopped immediately, because what I see in the community can't change unless you stop it.
More people are going to die by 2025, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, get it done now.
It's killing our whakapapa. It's killing our wairu. It's killing everything that we are as in Te Ao Māori. We need to take it out of the shops, stop it straight away, and get rid of it as soon as possible.
We should stop selling cigarettes. Let us be examples, because I wasn't. And I think we should make that change for our kids.
So this is the aroha of our mahi in smoke-free. This is why we do the mahi we do, to bring about smoke-free change. I'll now hand it over to Amanda to talk about what comes next. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, councillors. As Teresa said earlier, we have had good gains in smoking rates and reductions. However, smoking is still not done in New Zealand. It remains a major cause of death and disease, and smoking actually still drives health inequity. Smoking in Maori and Pacific communities higher than that for the overall population. We should not forget also that it's been 10 years since the Maori Affairs Select Committee into the tobacco industry, and a lot of the recommendations from that report have not yet been progressed. Next slide, please. In April, the government put out a discussion paper outlining proposals for a smoke-free Aotearoa 2025 action plan. The proposals included a number of really bold policy options, and while Smoke-Free Canterbury is supportive of all of the measures in the proposals, we actually think the key priorities are measures to strengthen the tobacco control system and increase Māori governance, to make smoked tobacco products less available and reduce tobacco availability in our communities, and to make tobacco less addictive and appealing, reducing nicotine levels in smoked tobacco products. One area we did feel missing in the proposals was a commitment to smoke-free outdoor environments, and of course this is where our local councils are leaders and do great work. And we would urge all councils to continue to advocate for this to be included in the Smoke-Free Action Plan proposals as the consultation progresses. Over to Teresa.
We acknowledge that council are instrumental in smoke-free advocacy, and our smoke-free collaboration over the years is testimony to this. We expect a smoke-free action plan to be released sometime in November, December, with legislation consulted on and submission of 22. Strongly encourage Christchurch City Council to be part of that consultation going forward, and we look forward to working with the council, youth networks and community boards to support the smoke-free action plan over the next few months. As Dave has said, more people are going to die by 2025. Let's get it done now. Amanda and I would welcome any questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the 10 minutes, but I think it's probably time for one question if there is one. No, the information was really comprehensive and the video was really good. So thanks so much for taking the time to show us that and to talk to us. And we'll be considering that paper shortly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Kia ora. Ka kite. Ka kite.
Ka kite. And kia ora, next we have Bridget Williams. So welcome, Bridget. You've done this before.
Yeah. So tēnā koutou katoa, ko Bridget toka ingoa no o te tahi ahau. He kai mahi ahau i te kamupeni o Bed and Proceed, he mihi mai o ha kia koutou katoa. So kia ora everyone, my name is Bridget Williams. I'm from Christchurch, Botatahi, and I lead a social enterprise called Bed and Proceed. Now, I might have my colleague Selena join us soon, but I know that she has also got another meeting at the same time. But before I get started, I just want to highlight that today I'm speaking in my capacity as founder of Bed and Proceed, not as chair of the Whenua Māori Hewa Community Board. But if we could go to the next slide, that'd be great. Because you probably want to know, what is Bed and Proceed? What do we do? So we are a social enterprise that exists to educate Aotearoa and beyond on the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals and to inspire action towards them through creativity. And the way we do that is started off as a really simple idea by bringing people together to each make and paint a 5-beaded necklace, bracelet or keyring in the top 5 Sustainable Development Goals that they care about personally. And since launching in 2019, we now offer a range of different workshops, both physical and virtual. We do a range of creative activities and experiences, and also offer ongoing sustainable development consulting. So with that, we can go to the next slide. The Sustainable Development Goals, here they are in all their colourful glory. And I understand that on the table today is the opportunity for Council to sign the declaration for the goals. So this framework goes by many different names, such as the People's Goals, the Global Goals, the Moonshot Goals, and the lovable acronym SDGs. So I'm going to be using the acronym going forward, the SDGs. So what makes this framework so special is three things, and I'm going to be highlighting what those three things are and why, if Council didn't take the opportunity to sign the declaration, it would not only does it make sense to do that, but it would also be a missed opportunity. So the first thing is that this framework, it speaks an international language. So all 193 UN member states, including New Zealand, adopted the SDGs back in 2015. And so this makes this framework the largest framework globally for sustainability, right? And that's really important if Otatahi Christchurch wants to be in that international spotlight, using the relevant language that other states around the world are using around how to measure its sustainable impact. It's this framework. It speaks that international language. Now, the other slide, next one, awesome. So the second thing about what makes this framework so special is it looks at sustainability in all its forms: economic, social, and environmental. And for so long, we've normally been focusing on just environmental issues, but now we're seeing how interconnected these issues are, which makes this framework really special because it's relevant to every industry, as every industry impacts these three areas, especially council portfolios. And it also means this framework isn't polarizing. We can care about economic issues, we can care about the environment or social issues, because we now see that these three issues are interconnected. And for the next slide, we're also seeing how interconnected this framework is again. So this is a beautiful illustration of how our biosphere, our environment, our society, and our economy are all interconnected, and the relevant SDGs within this SDG cake diagram. And now what keeps this cake's shape, the icing, if you will, between each layer of cake, is SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals. Now, some believe this is the least important SDG. Others, such as myself, believe this is the most important SDG. It's about collaboration. It is about being an advocate for this framework, championing this framework. And that's what signing the declaration today will help achieve and help ensure that that happens. So with the next slide, the question is, what role does local government have to play towards the SDGs? Well, it turns out you've got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. So moving to the next slide. A whole report has been done on it. This report was put together by the United Cities and Local Governments, and it's actually this report and this organisation that really advocated for SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, to make it to the 17 SDGs. This is about making our cities and human settlements inclusive, resilient and sustainable, a huge part of what Christchurch City Council does. And in the next slide, it actually takes out an exact quote about what the role of local government has. So all of the SDGs have targets that are directly or indirectly related to the daily work of local and regional governments. Local governments should not be seen as mere implementers of the agenda. Local governments are policymakers, catalysts of change, and the level of government best placed to link the global goals with local communities. So local government, aka our council, has a massive part to play towards championing the SDGs, and signing the declaration today would be a great way to achieve that. And the next slide, we'll actually see some examples of what New Zealand is already doing. So we're seeing different councils championing the SDGs in their own way. We've got the Waikato Wellbeing Project, where they are weaving all of the SDGs through this wonderful campaign. We're also seeing different councils putting on events for the public to educate its citizens and residents on what the SDGs are, such as the Palmerston North City Council. We're also seeing the Sustainable Development Goals weaved through the Auckland Plan for 2050. We're seeing our own Christchurch NZ weave the SDGs through its strategy as well. The overarching lens that they look at is the SDGs when they're considering decisions and making strategic decisions. We've just recently had our own SDG National Summit in our backyard. And of course, there is also the recent report put together by the Auditor General, the government's preparedness to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. And 3 really key things came out of that document. The first is there needs to be more clarity around what government is doing towards the SDGs. The second is there needs to be more effective measures around the targets and indicators. And the third is the importance for there to be a growing awareness for stakeholders and the wider community. So it's really only a matter of time until the SDGs grow in importance. And I would like to see Ōtautahi Christchurch take that opportunity to be a leader rather than a follower. And moving on to the next slide. We're also seeing that there are a range of frameworks. I know what you might be thinking, great, another framework. But the thing is, I go back to that point around this being the international framework. So we've got the Living Standards Framework, the 4 Wellbeings, and what we're now seeing is through indicators Aotearoa, they are now aligning the SDGs to the 4 Wellbeings Framework. So the SDGs are actually being used to help report and measure on these other frameworks. So they are interconnected. And moving on to the next slide, we'll see that we need more champions than ever. So according to the latest information, this is how Aotearoa New Zealand is tracking. This information is put together by the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And you'll see that we're on track to achieving affordable and clean energy, but we still have 4 major challenges for us to look at. So we've got climate action, life on land, partnerships for the goals, which is such a shame, and of course, responsible consumption and production. And we're still going backwards on life on land. And when you see how is Aotearoa tracking globally, we're currently sitting at number 23 on the SDG Global Rank. The year before that, we were at number 16. And the year before that, we were at number 11. It's not necessarily that we're going backwards. Other states are doing well as well, but I would love to see Aotearoa be in that top 3 spot. And it just makes sense that Ōtautahi leads by that example. And the really sad thing is no state is on track to achieving all 17 SDGs by the 2030 deadline, which means we need more champions than ever. And moving on to the next slide. That is why I left my law job to paint beads for a living. But in all seriousness, it's because we actually want to really help push this framework, grow awareness, and we go into different businesses and organisations to help businesses connect with the SDGs personally, help align to them, to the relevant goals and the relevant targets. And what's really exciting is we are already working with other councils. So we've already worked with the Taurua District Council, the Palmerston North City Council. We're soon to be working with the Otago Regional Council and also Auckland Transport. So if Christchurch City Council wants a workshop, then that would be great. But really it's about helping to grow that awareness and have Ōtautahi be a city that leads by example. We have gone through so much as a community, and in the Decade of Action, which started in 2020, we just had the 6th anniversary of the SDGs back on the 25th of September. We need more champions than ever. So I would like to say a huge thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you all today, and I hope that the decision you make today around the declaration of the SDGs is the correct one, so we can create the world we want by 2030. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, Bridget. You might be aware that you've used up your 10 minutes perfectly. But like the last one, I will leave space for one question if someone has one. So the Mayor's got a question.
I just was really keen for your take on the importance of cities signing up to these. These are all parts of international agreements and covenants and commitments, and what's the significance of a city signing up?
So, I would say that it obviously speaks volumes. It's about not only building the awareness of its residents and its community to say, wow, this is a city that is not only championing the goals, but determined to actually take action towards it. So it's setting that great example, and we need to build awareness. I mean, as you would have seen in the in the slideshow I showed you before, we're going backwards on some of these goals. And so we really need to have people leading, not just people, but organisations leading by example. So the significance of a city making the stand to champion this framework would speak volumes. It would help raise the awareness. And once again, it would also be a way to help get us on that international spotlight. We've already been in that spotlight with some of the horrific events we've been through. So it just makes sense. And it would be a natural step for us to adopt this SDG framework further, because it's so connected to what we've been through and to what we're trying to champion as a council anyway. So it would be a missed opportunity.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Very quick.
The dashboard that you've got on your second to last slide. Regarding the dashboard that you've got on the second to last slide, who compiles that and arrives at those numbers? And
Yeah. So it's put together by the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and that organisation takes publicly available information. It's so things like the census, World Bank, World Health Organization, that sort of thing. What I did, they aren't in communication with Aotearoa Statistics, but if you went along to the SDG Summit that Christchurch hosted, you would know that they're wanting to take the opportunity to talk to that organisation so they can share that data. So it's captured by publicly available information, but yeah, put together by the Sustainable Development Solutions Network.
That's fantastic. That's an international.
Yeah, international. So within they release a report every July to see how each state is tracking.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is they also look at the information on the spillover effect as well. So like, what is the effect of Aotearoa New Zealand championing working towards the SDGs? What is the effect that it has towards other states?
Yep, no,
so
that's great. Thanks, Bridget. I was actually looking at measure number 6. I found that really interesting. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bridget.
That's all right. Thank you, team. Make the right decision.
Kia ora, thank you. So we've got no presentation of petitions today, and we're going to move. Yeah, I've sent it now. Going to move to item 9. So the opportunity to join the City's Race to Zero Climate Initiative and sign the Aotearoa SDG Declaration. Welcome, Tony and Kerry. You certainly could. I'll get the mayor to introduce.
Yeah, sorry. Because this was an unusual conduit to the council table, I just wondered if I could introduce the paper, because I was the one that asked for it to be put on the agenda of this committee, Sustainability and Community Resilience, given the topics. But there are 2 issues for consideration today. One's joining the City's Race to Zero initiative, and that was as a result of an invitation from Auckland Mayor Phil Goff to join the City's Race to Zero Climate Initiative. Now, Auckland is part of the C40 group, and they have an ambition to get 1,000 cities to sign up to the Race to Zero by the time of COP26. So it's an important part of a global campaign to support our governments as they go to Glasgow to reconsider their commitments and up their commitments in relation to the Paris Accord. So it is an important initiative in that regard. People often ask, what is the point of doing that? And in a way, that was the question I asked Bridget about the significance of cities signing up to what is a government initiative, essentially government to government. And I think it is really to draw attention to what we are doing as individual cities to contribute to the reduction of emissions, and that's to give strength to our governments as they travel to Glasgow. We need to include one commitment, and I think one of the shortcomings of the paper is that it doesn't identify that there are a number of commitments that we could have chosen And there are a number of activities that are going on that we've signed up to that we could have used as the example. And I think that in defining the particular list of actions that cities can commit to, they looked at sort of generic statements and then stretch targets. So they were part of a single one. So the one that we've chosen for this, and I think the report probably should note that we have committed to a range of areas and responding to the call for action in a number of areas like food and all of those other issues. So that should go into the recommendations. The one we've chosen is something that we're already doing, which is expanding and improving walking, cycling and integrated transit initiatives. And the stretch target is identifying potential areas for zero carbon zones. And I just thought, one of the things that we've got that no other city has got is an area 4 times the size of Hagley Park, where we are developing a co-governance model that could actually take on this challenge quite significantly and quite dramatically, because it's at the front end of a process, and that's the Otakaro-Avon River corridor. So I think we need to be seriously thinking outside the square in a literal sense and think about what those opportunities are. In terms of the second item that we were asked to look at here, I attended the Aotearoa Sustainable Development Goals Summit hosted by Canterbury University, Lincoln University, and supported by Council and ARA. And I said at that conference, and it was by Zoom, that I would bring this declaration to Council for formal sign-off. And we've already heard from Bridget, and I think she's probably put it better than anyone else could. But I just wanted to quote from the declaration: no single organisation can achieve the SDGs on their own. Change requires us to work boldly within and across sectors, and we are committing to work collaboratively where possible and appropriate. And as Bridget said, it speaks an international language, and it's all about collaboration. So I'm happy to move with an appropriate amendment to the list of recommendations.
Okay, thanks for that. Do I have a seconder before we go to questions? Mike, thank you very much. Okay, do we have questions for staff at this point? Jimmy, and then Yanni.
Regarding to the 9.2, particular risk management implication. I mean, if we to join this city race to zero climate initiative, and also we sign Aotearoa SDG the declaration, except the staff need more additional time. Which else are the resources as a council we need to, to be the, to prepare, to meet more, can meet all those commitment.
Thanks, Jimmy.
It's my
the
question.
Resourcing.
So we've chosen a action that the council's already working on to obviously advance, cycling and walking in the city, and we're very active in that area. We're also doing transport planning for Christchurch, and that's underway at the moment. So the action that's proposed here is wrapped into that. We're not looking to secure any more resources for this, and this report specifically says that we're not asking for further funding. It says we're going to deliver this within the existing LTP allocation.
And the reporting requirements on this can be done through our normal reporting efforts, and so there's no sort of additional separate requirement to report separately through the channels that we already do.
Second question is because based on the Bridget presentation, particularly regarding to the SDG, they have 17 those the goals. So every goal, except the 17, every goal is a bigger issue. We have to work in closely with the partnership, particularly highlight those 17 working together partnership. Who is our council's partnership? We can achieve this goal.
Right. So, I mean, obviously the City Council is working with many organisations in in Christchurch to deliver on a range of those different goals. It would be very hard for me to list all of those today. But the key point, I suppose, is we are already taking a sort of a health and well-being approach to all our policies. And we've got a guide, for example, here, this integrated planning guide that uses the Sustainable Development Goals as a basis for our decision making. It's sort of a prompt for when we're doing planning. We can engage. This was used for example, the recovery plan for Christchurch Central area, and also in the Kaikoura recovery plan when we were part of that process. So we are already using the SDGs in various ways to help inform our planning and our policies. And of course, working across the city is a vital part of achieving those goals. And so, for example, the climate change, climate resilience strategy, one of the first actions is to formalise those partnerships across the district so we can deliver the change we need to see with our partners.
Okay, thank you.
Tony, maybe it'll help if you could give us, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, a rundown of a couple of the other organisations that joined as part of the declaration as part of the summit.
Sure. So as of this week, there's 195 organisations have signed the Sustainable Development Goals Declaration. So some of those are, of course, the Canterbury University and Lincoln University, ARA as well, and Student Volunteer Army, BOMA, and Enable, which is the Christchurch Holdings Limited company. So there are a number of local organisations. Christchurch City would be the first council, though, to join. And there is a possibility for us to invite other councils, like Auckland has done with the Race to Zero. We could actually invite other councils to invite them to take part in this declaration as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Yanni.
Thank you. Will this apply to our entities and our CCOs? Like, what impact will this have on CCHL and Christchurch NZ if we sign up to these agreements?
So my understanding is that this is a city council signing, declaration, and so that they would have to decide on their own whether they would sign that or not.
But
so this would encourage them, of course, to do that.
Aren't they part of us? Like, it does seem a bit.
I think you might have heard, Yanni, that Christchurch NZ already have a Sustainable Development Goals framework, and some of the subsidiaries from CCHL do as well.
But if you look at some of the targets around, growing population, growing GDP, it's kind of a little bit contrary to maybe some of the things that are being put forward.
So they're independent organisations that they can make their own choices. I just will want to refer to the comment about this is the government relationship. Most of the people who are taking SDGs on seriously in this country are actually businesses. So throughout New Zealand, businesses are leading the charge on using the SDGs as their framework for understanding sustainability. So I would imagine that most of our trading companies probably are already using it or considering using it.
Right. And did we consider the Greater Christchurch Partnership actually signing up? So we've got a bit more of a regional focus, given that land use planning and the whole spatial planning has been done in that regard?
Well, that could be a recommendation from this committee.
Yeah. Would you like to put that forward, Yanni?
For the Sustainable Development Goals, I think that absolutely should be at the heart of what they're doing.
Okay, so there's two things as part of these. If there's no more questions, there's been some indications of some potential changes to the wording. So, Aaron, did you have a question or a proposal? Yep.
No, just a couple of questions. So you said before, Tony, that we're not going to commit any more resources and we're already doing the stuff. So what's the point in signing it if we're already doing it?
So the reason we can sign it is because we have met those commitments. As the Mayor said at the start, we've got a range of things like our climate change goals and objectives, which feed directly into this commitment. If we hadn't already made a target of having being carbon neutral by 2045, we wouldn't be able to sign this declaration. So because we have made those commitments, we're able to sign this declaration and show other countries and certainly other governments around the world and other communities that we are committed to making change on climate change.
And there also will be a wider suite of transport planning as part of this. And so the future potential sort of zero emission zones, low emission zones, that type of thing will be something that will be developed over the next few years as part of the wider transport considerations for what we need to do towards meeting our targets in Christchurch.
So that leads me to my next question, if I may, is around those zero emission zones or zero carbon zones, because this is the first I kind of really knew of them. what do they look like, and are there unintended consequences of doing those, like on low-income communities, on businesses, shifting the problem where we actually increase carbon because people now go further to go somewhere else? Have we looked at that?
Yeah, those are all the types of things we'd be looking at as part of deciding whether they would be actually useful in Christchurch and what the consequences and the costs and benefits of the various alterations are. There's over 300 cities in the EU that do have low emission zones already, so it's not something that's like a totally new idea. And there's a whole range of things in terms of low emissions or zero emission zones. It may be something like the Mayor was sort of saying in the residential red zone in terms of keeping that car free or fossil fuel vehicle free, or even getting electric lawnmowers type that, right up to saying from Auckland, for example, looking at a zero emission zone. I believe it's from 2030. That's right down Queen Street and some of those surrounding central city things. And that will be looking at excluding fossil fuel vehicles after 2030. Or some cities in Europe, for example, are like you do your deliveries between 6 and 8 a.m. And then after that, it's a zero emission zone during the day. So it's a pedestrian area such as like down Cashel Mall and that sort of thing. So there's a whole range, and that would be what would be looked at as part of that.
Yeah, because I did look at the comparison they made in the paper.
But Aaron, just making sure this is a question, not debate.
Yeah, I'll just frame it.
Well,
did you know I looked at the...
No, Aaron, do you have a question for staff ahead of the debate?
I learned that one from Phil. So then finally, in 5.1 in our paper, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like the fifth bullet point. It says, invite political leaders. I think that was the one that Yanni was referring to, CEOs, trade unions, investors, and so everyone else to join. And then help us deliver on science-based action to overcome it. What does the science-based action look like? That's the most exciting part.
So the targets that the city has set are what we call science-based targets. They've been in response to the IPCC's latest advice on climate change, and also, of course, the consultation we ran with our community about what they would like to see for Christchurch. So that's an example of a science-based approach where we commit to a target that is matched by the science. We have to follow through with the actions, of course, and we're starting to implement the climate resilience strategy at the moment, but we've already underway on a whole range of actions. The city is showing leadership in many different areas, including waste and energy and transport. So that all those examples are a part of the package, which will help us get to that science-based target.
So hang on. So that's science to measure it or science to solve it?
Both, probably. The science to measure it is based on the science of what we need to do to keep it to 1.5 degrees by 2030 and by mid-2040s. And then there's obviously technical solutions all the way along to help bring about that low emission transport, for example, or more energy efficient homes. It's interesting to note as well, there's 730 schools and universities have already signed up to the Race to Zero, so there's a lot of research sort of capabilities, and also 220 financial institutions have signed up as well. So it's not just sort of environmental organisations that are pushing this. Big financial institutions are really recognising the threats here. Universities and cities and 4,400 companies are behind this as well. So it is a wide spectrum of people that are looking at it.
So just my final question then is, when will we as a council see the first science-based solution in front of us, not measuring, but an actual, here's a solution, this will drop carbon by this much?
Well, I think all the actions we are taking will be reducing the emissions, and we are measuring, of course, the emissions for the city and, of course, the organisation as well. So that's the cumulative effect of a whole range of policies from this council, but also national policies as well. So it's very hard to identify a specific intervention and the carbon associated with it, but we have done some modelling that will help us at that level, the level you're describing. Here's the intervention and here's the emission reduction. That is modelling we've done, and we're going to improve that in time as well. And in fact, you'll see soon from a transport point of view, looking at the transport choices we can make for the city and the emission reductions we can expect to see from those different choices.
Aaron, I was going to say, rather than going into technical detail now, would you like to have an offline conversation with staff around the technical detail, or a briefing at some point? Because there's lots of research on climate change stuff and science-based stuff, and if you'd like some additional information, we can organise that. Would you like some additional information on that?
only if it's public.
That's fine. We can
Thank you.
organise.
Yep.
We
Yeah,
had,
it's the public we need to get on board.
Yeah. Well, it'll be links to publicly available research. Yeah. Right, can I just got a wee note here? Can you remind members to use their microphone? I guess there's with the live streaming and with Sam online, make sure that people are doing that. So that'd be good. Right. Are there any further questions?
I added another recommendation.
Yeah. So we need to get to the wording now. So there was some around the race to zero. Oh, I see it down the bottom.
Yeah, I've added another one that says that the Mayor will invite the other members of the Greater Christchurch Partnership to sign the Aotearoa New Zealand Sustainable Development Goals Summit Declaration.
Great.
And the other notes that there are many aspects of the Race to Zero commitments that Council is currently delivering on or working towards, and requests an update on implementation of the Healthy Food Action Plan, especially as it relates to new council facilities.
I might just do all council facilities because there was the other discussion around what happens here as well.
Do you want just new or?
We'll just get an update on the Healthy Food Action Plan.
All right,
so just take the last.
Take out.
Just after the comma.
I don't want it ignored though.
No, I think we do need to make sure that gets checked.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so we've got a mover and seconder for those. Excellent, thank you very much. Does anyone want the two declarations put separately? Oh. Yeah. Hang on, we were keeping the other one in though, the invitation. Yeah, that's it. Great. Okay, so what I will do is I will put 1 to 5, which is the council's race to zero after the debate clearly, and well, it's only a noting provision. It references it, but it's only noting.
Yeah, but aren't you wanting to deal with the two different declarations together?
Yeah.
So might as well bundle the
Okay,
one that relates
that's fine.
to.
I'll do 1 to 5 and 9, and then the.
Well, if people are against the race to zero, then it wouldn't make sense for them to endorse the mayor
I've said
asking us
yes,
to sign
that's
it.
fine. And in fact, the Healthy Food Action Plan was to do with race to zero as well. So maybe 9 and 10 when we do that. Sorry. Well, that was part of that discussion. Right. So, do we have any debate, or Tim?
I'm actually going to. I know I'm going to abstain. I just think, although I've read the paper, I just think it's the right thing to
There's
do.
been lots of discussion,
Yes,
but you must. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's great. Thank you. Pauline.
Yep. I think this is really, really exciting. I think every little thing that we can do to announce our energy behind this and behind our climate change initiatives, and to actually take a leadership role, which we know local councils have to do. We have to lead and encourage people to follow by our example. And the things that we're already doing, I mean, for instance, the St Albans Community Centre that's just newly opened this year, that sequesters carbon. It's a beautiful building. Our sustainable food systems, we support the Vegan Society with their plant-based food and products, and their which encapsulates incredible innovation. I think that's a really important thing to think about with these plant-based initiatives. So we do support that through our funding. We have a joint waste committee that supports food waste reduction. Someone launched an electric rubbish truck a couple of years ago. We have a zero waste mentality with our closed landfills. We capture gas. Cape Valley landfill is an engineered sanitary facility. These are all things that are in here that we're already doing. And we support community gardens, which is a fantastic thing, recently appointing and funding a Christchurch Community Gardens coordinator. And in our land drainage and stormwater projects, we design these and deliver these with sustainability and climate change targets at the core. And I'd just like to say that I absolutely love the Mayor's idea of the Otakaro River Corridor being a zero emission zone. I think that's a brilliant initiative and it's something that we could actually achieve. So, yeah, I'll be supporting this today, all of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? Andrew.
Thank you. I'll draw people's attention to paragraph 1.4 in the report. The wording there, the intention is to rally leadership and support from businesses, cities, regions and investors for a healthy, resilient, zero carbon transition that prevents future threats, creates decent jobs and unlocks inclusive, sustainable growth. It's very difficult to argue with that as a set of outcomes that we would want in Christchurch, and I see no reason why we wouldn't, for that reason, support these resolutions. But it's important that this is a catalyst for actual measurable action. When we signed the climate and ecological emergency, I talked at that time about making sure that that led to action rather than just talk, and signing this declaration is exactly the same. So I'm happy with these recommendations as long as our commitment does lead to action. And in fact, in some cases, as we've already heard, we already are doing that. There's a lot here that's well aligned with work that we're already doing. And in fact, the action that we've chosen is one that we're already working on. The idea of having a low emission zone, or even better, a zero emission zone, is absolutely a conversation that we should be having. And if this is a vehicle, pardon the pun, to start that conversation, then I welcome it. And it sounds as though that conversation's already started as a result of this meeting. So this has already been a helpful discussion. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do this. In fact, I can see every reason why we should, and I'll be very happy to support these recommendations today.
Good, thanks, Andrew. Further debate, Jimmy.
Thank you. Yeah, but actually, these are two issues. One is, to join the city's race to zero climate initiative. So to me, this one is more confidence, because why council, we already, have declared this city is the kind of the ecological and the climate, the emerging city, and also we have adopted our climate resilient strategy. And also our goal is consistent with this goal. This goal, we review the 5.1 is just reach net zero in the 2040s, or by the mid the century of this 22nd century. Actually, it's consistent with our goal. So at the moment, we are already, to undertake this one, still in the process. So to me, it's good. But second one, I think is because signed the Aotearoa, the SDG, the declaration, particular sustainable the development goals, because we can see they have 17 wide range of goals. But if we review 5.12, the council choose to sign the declaration can determine their own involvement and support the SDG alliance. So also flexibility, how we could report on our progress likely be covered by our current report on common outcome. Yeah, if this is flexible, I would like to agree. If not flexible, if we commitment, we have to fulfill our duty to implement or working together with our partnership, to achieve this 17 goal. Probably it's a big, huge challenge for us. It's not only for the staff, additional time can do it. Possibly, and also we need to review all those the SDG, whether current the strategy or policies, is ready in there, and also whether we have action plan or action program in there ready can achieve the goal. But if the 5.12 is true, then I would like to support this one. It's only my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? Yanni.
Thank you. I really want to separate this out into two parts, which is the race to zero and then the sustainability goals. I strongly support the sustainability goals. And what's really interesting is on the preface to our multicultural strategy, we have a Māori proverb, araha ki te whenua, te tuapapa o te manaaki, kia atawhai kia te iwi, which means love and respect to the land, which is the foundation of hospitality and care for the people. And I think that's really important when we reflect on the way in which funding has been allocated to economic development. We've set very clear targets about growing GDP and growing population. But the reality is that has a cost. That has a cost on our environment, and it has the opportunity to create huge inequity in our city. So when we use rates to fund, very expensive inner city apartments, and yet we don't put rates into our social housing, then, I think we do need to think about how we're meeting these sustainable development goals. So I hope that this actually sends a strong signal to us as a city and hopefully to our companies that that economic development at the expense of inequity and environmental and social implications is not acceptable, and we are going to think differently about how we prioritise. In regards to the race to the zero, I mean, my concern is that basically what we've heard is that this signing up to this actually doesn't change what we're doing. It just means we keep doing what we've always been doing. It's not any extra resource. But more importantly, I think what's a huge gap is it doesn't apply to our council companies. And when you think about like the Terrace Airport, for example, or you think about the ability for our companies to actually show the way in terms of sustainability because of the wide range of activities that they do, then to me that's a huge shortcoming. And I do find it a little bit ironic that we would be signing up as a city, and yet we still have these other processes underway that seem to be contrary to the declaration that we're making.
Thank you. Aaron.
While I kind of agree with Yanni on some points, not completely on all of them, the SDGs I am happy to support. They make a lot of sense. Certainly SDG number 1, the reduction of poverty, and I'll just point out to Yanni that over the last couple of 100 years, with economic growth throughout the world, poverty has reduced dramatically around the planet, and is set to do so to the point where many that advise the UN say by the end of the century poverty will almost not exist. It'll be measurable, and yes, there'll be rich and poor, but poverty, like we've seen in the past, it is scheduled to be made extinct, which is a good thing. Sustainability is an interesting word because everything we do going forward as a planet must be sustainable, which is also economically sustainable. When things cost a lot more money to get a particular outcome, chances are something's wrong with its sustainability. And when you see the pictures of thousands of propeller blades from wind farms being buried in the ground, or issues with electric battery dumping going forward, we have some issues around the ways we think we're going to solve climate change. Looking for the science-based approach, I look forward to. Some of the best inventions that will solve climate change have not been invented yet. They will be coming. To hear that many educational facilities have signed up to this is good. Are they committed to it as their number one thing? I doubt it, and I think they should be. This council often goes on and pats itself on the back about how sustainable we are. I don't think we are. I think we've got a long way to go in the way we do transport, but it has to make sense. The dollars have to make sense, and that is something that often doesn't happen here. We subsidise things which will often mean that there's a problem in the model. So we have to come up with actual science-based solutions. We need to recycle a hell of a lot more. There's too much waste. When we dump glass under roads and call that that's not recycling, that's dumping glass under a road. There's many uses we could use around glass. Go back to when I was a child, the planet recycled way more and had way less waste. It's weird how we've gone backwards. That needs changing, so we could do a lot better. I think the declaration to the race to zero, given that it doesn't change anything we're doing to achieve the actual race to zero, is pointless. What a waste of time and effort. And if the Mayor wants to sign it, I have no issue with that at all. But I won't be supporting it myself because I think we could do a lot better in the race to actual zero and making the planet a better and more sustainable place. And the dollars have to make sense. And you can't go subsidising things just because it is
Aaron.
greenwashing. Okay, I knew it would be.
Melanie.
Look, I support all of this. I think it's pretty obvious. In fact, it doesn't really need any words to explain that. But I do think that any councillors that won't support the race to zero mean that they don't want to provide leadership. They don't want to support businesses, cities, regions, investors to have a healthy, resilient, zero carbon recovery. It means that they don't want to prevent future threats, they don't want to create decent jobs, and they don't want to unlock inclusive, sustainable growth. I find it appalling.
Anne.
Kia ora, I just want to totally agree with everything Mel's just said, but I also want to think about the young person that we had sitting here yesterday and their future and my grandchildren's future. And I think everything we can do, we need to do, and we need to do it now. So totally supportive of all that's in front of us.
Phil.
Yeah, I sort of agree with a little bit here and there. Just to give you an idea about the sustainability thing that Aaron was talking about, I went yesterday down to New Brighton where a contractor is repairing the stop bank because it's slightly damaged. It's not quite wide enough. They need to just thicken it up until that Waitaki Basin actually gets built. They're just a bit worried that it might blow out. And I said, oh, yeah, what are you doing? You're doing a good job. Excellent. But instead of driving down a red zone road, which is all rough and shingle, and which is fine, the road is knackered, they're building a separate road across the red zone with fabric and shingle and all that sort of thing. I said, and that's, in my estimation, that's probably got to be about 10 grand's worth of work, which is a lot of carbon and diggers and trucks and stuff. Whereas they could drive down the road, which is there. I said, why aren't you just driving down there? We're not allowed to because there's a bird nesting in the bushes next to it, we might scare it. So we're spending 10 grand on a temporary road that's only going to be there for a week to fix something that the job's probably only about 8 grand's worth of work itself, and we're spending all this money to it doesn't make sense to me. We're burning up more carbon to save a sparrow, say, in a nest that's not even where the truck's going to drive. So we've got to think a bit cleverer, because we're just wasting money in some respects. Thank you.
Any further debate?
I'm going to reserve my right to speak at the end, so everyone else is finished after I'm obviously the mover.
Okay, well, I'll speak then. So if there's no one else. Okay, so I think that both of these are a no-brainer today. And I think that one of the things is clear is that they're not designed to change necessarily what we do as an organisation. They're designed for us to show leadership and to change what others do. So the Race to Zero is a global campaign to rally leadership and support from businesses, cities, regions, investors for a healthy, resilient carbon recovery that prevents future threats, creates decent jobs and unlocks inclusive, sustainable growth. It mobilises a coalition of leading net zero initiatives representing 733 cities, 31 regions, 3,067 businesses, 173 of the biggest investors, and 622 higher education institutions. These real economy actors join 120 countries in the largest ever alliance committed to achieving net carbon zero emissions by 2050 at the latest. The objective is to build momentum around the shift to a decarbonised economy ahead of COP26, where governments must strengthen their contributions to the Paris Agreement. For us to not join that, for us to not put pressure on governments to reduce emissions and strengthen their agreements, is for us to give in to climate change, for us to deny that it's really happening, and for us to deny that we play a role in that leadership. The Sustainable Development Goals Declaration is fantastic, and I'd like to thank Bridget for her deputation today. I think that it's hard to take seriously sometimes the protestations of virtue signalling and others when they come from those who vote against every action that we have had proposed to actually reduce emissions, having already voted in favour of the net neutral targets and the climate resilience strategy. Thanks. Mike.
Thank you. Look, I'll be supporting all of the recommendations in front of us. They're no-brainers. It's makes total sense to support these. Quite frankly, people that would vote against any of these, you've got to question their leadership around this for this city. We know that as a planet, there is a climate emergency, and the things that we do and the leadership we show is really important to actually make sure we address some of the issues that we currently face. I'm concerned about some of the comments, especially if we're spending $10,000 to ensure that potentially an endangered species isn't actually killed, that's actually money well spent. The amount of species that have been killed because of human activity around this planet is shocking. So we actually need to invest money to make sure that doesn't continue to happen. I heard a bit of a pot shot at our Economic Development Agency. They've actually been using an SDG framework for quite a long time, and they take a sustainable economic development approach, which is the investment in business, social and natural environment that creates prosperity for all now and into the future. So actually you do have economic development that is sustainable if you take the right attitude, which they are doing. So it's disappointing when councillors actually trying to attack our companies. Look, it's very clear that what we're doing is the right thing. Signing up for this, and both of these, looking at the goal that we're setting for transport, it's perfect timing with the development of our strategic transport plan, that we look at where we can do some emission-free zones or low emission zones, and the Mayor's already pointed out a very good place. I can't see why anyone would actually vote against this. It shows true leadership in this space. It actually keeps the pressure on us as a council to continue the work that we're doing. It unlocks shared resources. There is no negative in actually saying no to this. The only rationale that I could put why you would say no to any of these is actually you're a climate change denier.
Right, Leanne, would you like to wind up?
Thank you very much for the debate. I have to say that I wasn't aware that joining the Race to Zero would have become as politicised as it had until I read the letters to the editor this morning. And when I read the letters to the editor, I realised that some people had been commenting on this paper before it came to council. And I just want to say that it's really disappointing to read things in the paper when nobody's come and talked to me. Everyone could see in the paper that I'd been asked by the Mayor of Auckland to sign up to an initiative that brings another 999 cities together in order to put pressure on governments to actually improve their commitments in relation to climate change. I mean, I don't know, am I that unapproachable that people can't come and have a serious conversation with me? This is not actually about, this is not a groupthink. It's not about changing the planet without changing the planet. It's actually about recognising that government commitments are required in order to achieve what we need to achieve, because the world is at its limits. That's the reality, and I don't know how much evidence people require of that, but I think it was Antonio Guterres said in relation to the latest report from the International Panel on Climate Change, Code Red for Humanity. What part of that do we not understand? That is the scientific evidence that sits in behind this. So, no, I don't think that it's denial. I think it's politicisation of something that doesn't need to be politicised. This sits alongside the second resolution on the SDGs. The two are both significant because they're symbolic, and they're symbolic of leadership. They're symbolic of the commitment that we have made as a council. And the fact that it isn't about us doing nothing, which is how it's been framed in a debate that's taken place outside my frame of reference. It's not about doing nothing. It's actually about showing how our actions can help influence others take action. Joining the 1,000 makes good sense ahead of COP26, and I hope that they're successful in achieving the 1,000. I'm really glad that Christchurch is going to be one of them.
Right, thank you very much. And with that, I will do actually probably 1 to 5 and 9, because I have a feeling that 10 might be requested. Yanni, did you want 10 separately?
Sarah, could no one see my hand up before?
No, I couldn't see a hand.
Yes,
no
you've
one indicated.
had the hand up raised the whole time.
Yeah,
there's no,
I've just taken that down.
But this way. Okay.
Someone's on Zoom. Watch it.
No, don't. Well, I mean, it's fine, but I mean, yeah, that's okay, I guess.
I did
He had singled and you had the hand raised on there. He's had his hand raised up there.
it was very clear. When the times that I glanced over at you, your hand wasn't up, and I did ask specifically.
Oh, for God's sake.
You have 3 minutes. Have 3 minutes. Have 3 minutes, Sam.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's very clear.
Okay, you've turned into a Dalek. Okay, with that, I will put 1 to 5 plus just 9, actually. Sorry, Simone. 1 to 5 and 9. Those in favour? Yeah, just make it a division. Okay.
Got from over here. I need a microphone. Councillor Templeton.
Aye.
Councillor McClellan.
Aye.
Councillor McDonald.
That's a no. Couldn't hear it, but your mouth said no. Is that right? Yeah.
Councillor Johansson.
Staying on these 5.
Councillor Galloway.
Yes.
Councillor Coker. Councillor Chen.
Yes.
Mayor. Yes. Councillor Scandra, do you abstain? Yes. Councillor Major.
No.
Councillor Kewen.
No.
Councillor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Cotter.
Aye.
Councillor Chu.
Yes.
Councillor Turner.
Yes.
That's Chair 2 abstains, 3 against, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 4.
Thank you very much. Declared those ones carried. And now we'll move to 6, 7, 8, and 11. So we'll do a division on those as well. People don't want a division? No? Okay. So we'll just put these ones then. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Tim abstaining on that one.
Sorry,
Sam?
Instead of thumbs up.
Yep, thumbs up. Excellent. And we'll put number 10, the update on the implementation of the Healthy Food Action Plan. All in favour? Aye. Any against? Thanks, Sam. Okay, thanks. Declare that one carried as well. Thank you very much, and thank you, Tony and Kerry, for that. All right, next we move to the... sorry, Sam, you're at Dalek.
He needs to go off and come back.
You probably need to go off and come back on and flick through an email or a text message.
We'll try it with the video off. Yeah. See if the audio.
Do you want to
comes
try
through
again now,
that way.
Sam?
He's gone.
Oh, he's actually gone. Yep, that's cool. He's come back in.
Turning the video off helps heaps.
Yeah.
Just lower the bandwidth.
Well, sometimes the 5 is there, but you haven't connected, right? Okay, so we need to move to the Smoke Free 2025 Action Plan Implementation Progress Report 2020-2021. Welcome, Evangeline. Thank you very much. So it's good to have and good to see that the communications team are developing the digital animation to help with the promotion of this as well, which is really good because we are getting close to 2025. I'll take the report as read, but is there anything you'd like to add additionally to that?
Yeah, I'll just ask Josh to talk briefly about the future initiatives that we are planning.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Simon from the communications team just gives his apologies. Yeah, so we actually have done a decent amount of work. We talked with Te Pai Pikari, the youth committee, and we'll continue engaging with the youth sector in particular around some of the central government initiatives that are being kind of pushed around this. But in short, it remains a high priority for us, and the messaging that we're doing through the comms team is really great. So that's all from me.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions on this? Jimmy and then Pauline.
I'm concerned the signage, because based on information, because they have a kind of can signage be installed in the council's small-free, web-free public places? Council have quite a few facility whether those 10 signage can meet all those needs. Particularly, I'm concerned like sports parks, or maybe the public places, the entrance of a shopping mall or bus station, etc. Not only in the CBD area. Whether the staff any the plan for increase more number of the signage.
We have a staff from Sparks, and maybe we can ask Linda. Sorry.
Kia ora, Linda Burns from Parks. So your question is about putting more signs in parks. At the moment, our approach is that whenever we replace a sign, then we will look at the smoke-free and vape-free messaging at that time. Apart from the children's playgrounds, which was when the policy was first implemented, we put signs in every playground. Apart from that, we have, rather than going out and retrofitting every one of our thousands of signs, that's been our current approach. Any thoughts on that? I'd appreciate.
Even we install some of the signage, but it's only the small free, right? No way free.
That's correct. That's correct. In order to do that, that's a significant amount of work and cost, because we are literally talking thousands of signs that the council has across the city. So that hasn't been our approach at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pauline, then Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. Just in 4.11 on page 19, can you give us any more detail on the digital animation idea, the timeline for that, what it will look like, where it will be used, and also the cost, please?
Again, speaking on behalf of Simon, in terms of timeline, meeting with the design team is scheduled for Monday to work through the ideas, timelines, feasibility. In terms of price, I understand that it's from existing budgets. And your final question was around where?
Yeah, what is it, and how and where will it be used?
Yeah, I understand that we already have some smoke-free messaging in council facilities on the digital screens. Saying,
that sort of thing.
Thanks
yeah.
for not smoking here. So it would replace that with a short 15-second animation that's a little more vibrant in similar spaces.
Maybe bus shelters, possibly, or things like that.
I believe we've been talking
Be quite good to
about that.
know the cost of that. If we could send that out by memo or something, I'd be quite keen to know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Aaron, and then Andrew.
Yeah, so do we currently provide signage, smoke-free signage or smoke and vape-free signage for anywhere beyond just council facilities, parks, etc.? Like if businesses, private malls want signage for an area, do we provide that?
We partner with our Cancer Society and Canterbury DHB to provide us, to help us with the signage. And in fact, our staff distributed 10 signs of smoke-free and vape-free to our facility stands, and these were given to us by CDHB for free. So but we are still continuing to work with a Cancer Society for a possibility of having more.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, so I was made aware yesterday that CPH, Community and Public Health, are no longer providing signage because of budget cuts for the alcohol industry. So all the ones that promote safe drinking, so on and so forth, that's no longer being supplied. So that's and our licensing team here don't know the way forward on that, whether we will start supplying that or who. Has the same happened with smoking?
For our hospitality, for instance, we see our partner Cancer Society is helping with this hospitality. They are providing free tabletop signage for hospitalities who are wanting to promote their smoke-free policy. So yeah.
So, Madam Chair, we possibly need some information back to this committee at some point on if CPH are not going to be funding signage going forward for smoking, how are we going to pick that up and what
So
would the
if
cost
it
be?
becomes a problem, we'd like it reported to us. But it's community
Should we
public
find
health
out if
funded by
it's-
CDHB.
Yeah,
So that might be something that you're able to chase up at your end as well.
I believe it's already cut. So we should be asking the question in advance rather
So you're
than
saying that CDHB have cut smoke-free funding.
community and public health have cut smoke-free funding. CDHB are underfunded by the government. So printing signage is a separate issue.
Okay, well, we'll make sure that that's followed up to make sure that if that's an issue for us, then that's followed up. Yeah.
It's public, it's not. I don't think it's a secret that they're underfunded.
Okay, is there anything further, Tim? Oh, sorry, Andrew and then Tim.
Thank you. Outdoor dining spaces, leased public spaces. It's great to see conditions being put into those license agreements, making those smoke-free and vape-free. That's obviously new arrangements. There'll be a number of existing long-standing arrangements in place. Do those come up for renewal, and do we put those conditions in there when they do? Or is it essentially we've got to wait for those to expire or to run out before we get to a point of all our licensed public space being smoke-free and vape-free?
I believe our leasing staff do integrate the smoke-free and vape-free conditions into new and renewed licenses. So yeah.
So we will at some stage get to a point where all of that licensed space, because it's been renewed, will become smoke-free and vape-free.
That's our purpose. But again, our messaging to the licenses are more of we are encouraging them to have their own smoke-free policy so that they can provide smoke-free and vape-free dining areas. So yeah, that's how it is. Unless unless our leasing officer can provide some more information on this.
Thanks for the answer. I appreciate the leasing people aren't in the room at the moment. Thanks very much. Thank you.
That's fine. Tim.
Thank you. So there is a bit of a layer cake here because legally by law you can't smoke within a restaurant, etc. But then there's a bit of a grey area about you could have a smoking area. But I'm just wondering, is that still the case? Because then we have parks, etc. And our signage, I think, is doing an extremely good job because you hardly see anyone smoking nowadays. And you did fantastic work with the clubs with regards in rugby league. You started with those guys about drinking, and you hardly see that now at these games. And smoking's kind of going the same way. But my question, I guess, is can we have an idea of the success that the signage is having in our parks and our public spaces, because it seems to be doing very well? And is there a link between this putting signage up and events, council events would be a good one, and the support through regulatory penalties that we have? Because I don't know if we've got, sorry? The bylaws, etc. Are there any bylaws?
No, we don't have any bylaws when it comes to our smoke-free signage. But there is, for instance, the parks, they do have guidelines for signage wherein they integrate the smoke-free and vape-free messaging. And for events, they do encourage events organizers.
Yep.
These are none because our council-led events are vape-free and smoke-free. But those who are organized by external parties, they are encouraged to do so. So in fact, in 2020 to 2021, there was an increase of 45. I don't know. There was a 45% smoke-free and vape-free events, which is an increase of 11% from compared to the a year previous to that. So it's an encouraging undertaking wherein there was a good uptake of other organizers to make their events smoke-free and healthier, to have a healthier environment for everyone.
Thank you. And my last comment is the rather than changing signage, there are technology. Some of the stickers now are outstanding, and trying to fudge those onto an existing would probably be just to try and save some money and make it easier. Cheers.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. Anything further? If not, can I have a mover to motions? Melanie and Jimmy for second. Is there any debate? Jimmy.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. If we review 3.3, it's good news. The majority action plan initiative has now been successfully completed, and also we achieve those kind of initiative improve the health and well-being by reducing smoke prevalence. Also support achievement government's the goal of a smoke-free New Zealand by 2025 still going on. However, I'm concerned, we cannot take for granted. Particularly, we watch the cancer, the Society of Canterbury, particularly present still the Maori Pacific Island and young people is a significant smoking higher, and also secondhand smoke died 350 people per year. Among those 4,500 people, this give us the warning. This is still the series. So how the council working together with the Cancer the Society of Canterbury and also DHB, or called the Public and the Health, this community, closely, and also with the wider the community or business group closely. That's still very the challenge to us. The other one, I'm still concerned not only the CBD, because public place in the suburban area, key activity center, sports, the kind of the parks, and also those playground even install the original those signage, but we need to update. Need to take planning to replace renew for the future, because this is quite a serious issue and ongoing one. So we cannot take for granted. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Anyone else? No, in that case, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Cool. Thanks, Sam. Okay, carried. Okay, and with that, we come to 11 o'clock, so we'll have a 15-minute break and start again at 11:15. Thank you very much, everyone. Get started? Right.
We get such good rates for our bulk deals. It'll be cheaper for us to do it anyway.
Kia ora everyone, no mai anō. Welcome back. We've got a quorum here and Sam's online, so that's all good. Next up we have our Intangible Heritage Grant Fund applications. This is the first set of the Intangible Heritage Grants. And so what I'll get Staff to do is just give us a quick rundown on what that really means, and then we'll move to questions.
Kia ora koutou. Intangible heritage grants are a means by which we can really recognise and celebrate the diversity of the communities that make up Christchurch, Ototahi Christchurch now, and that have in the past. They came about as a result of the heritage strategy engagement that we did with the communities across the district, who told us that they didn't want heritage to just focus on buildings and places and objects, that it had to include stories, memories, things that give us our identity, our sense of place, our culture, and that connect us. And from that, we took the image of the rope, and that each of us has our own heritage story or stories, and these together are strands that we weave. And as we weave them, we tell this wonderful story that is heritage. And as time goes on, different groups, different communities add their stories to the rope, and it gets longer and broader. And if we look out 20, 30 years into the future to what we want this city to be, we do want it to be a city that is known across the world for inclusivity, diversity, and giving everybody a chance to tell their stories and have their spaces. These three grants have come from applicants really early on in the process, and they have all had to be very patient with us while we work through the guidelines. The first I'd like to present to you is for Team Hutchinson Ford, which is some interpretation panels that tell the story of our city. The Ford's building is such a key landmark where it sits, and as part of the redevelopment of the city and the plan following the earthquakes, a lane was carved through between the heritage building, which is the workshop, and their forecourt. That laneway is a greenway, and it's set to try and attract people to the area and create something of a unique sense of place and identity, a bit of quirkiness that makes Christchurch special as we rebuild. Part of that process for the laneways required Otakaro Limited, the City Council and the Matapopuri Trust to pull together a wayfinder trail which told stories around the city and got visitors as well as residents to rediscover the new rebuilt city and to find different places. We were really lucky that at the same time that this Wayfinders Trail was being developed, Team Hutchinson Ford decided they wanted to invest $65,000 on top of the $2.5 million that they're having to do in order to create this laneway, and also some very significant conservation and upgrade works on their scheduled heritage building. And they wanted to put some interpretation panels along that laneway to give it a presence and an identity and to make it somewhere that people would come to. They've got 5 panels planned that tell the story of Cecil Wood, who's the architect. And he's really important because he is one of the most prominent architects in Christchurch, public trust building, St Barnabas in Fendleton. And he was actually employed by the Ford family to build them a workshop at a time when cars were fairly new to the city. We were losing the horses and moving into cars. So the fact they chose a prominent architect to design this building shows how important it was at the time, and it's still there now as a landmark. They also want to tell the story of the motor car and how it's changed Christchurch over time, as well as how the car has changed. They do want to talk about their family and the fact that that family has been associated with the site since the 1920s. And the whole of Art Deco Christchurch and the facade on to St Asaph Street with its Art Deco. 2 of those panels that they were planning to do were ones that had already been identified as part of the council's internal strategy for the Wayfinder Trail. So council had already identified a need for 2 of these panels and put budget aside for the creation and the development of them. So if we were to approve a grant to Ford, that would enable these 2 panels to be created and incentivise them to put the other 3 panels up, and council would no longer need to provide those 2 panels themselves. So it's a really good opportunity for a partnership along there. Do you want to debate one and then move on to the next, or?
See if there's any questions on this one first. My first one is that if council's already got budget aside to develop 2 panels, why would we give a grant out of grant funding to someone else? And are they different when it comes to OPEX and CAPEX?
My understanding is that the panels that we would get will be bigger. They will have a wider range, and also we would get more than we would have covered ourselves. Also, if we were to fund it that way, then we don't have any ongoing maintenance and operational costs associated with it. They would sit with the building's owners.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Just on this one to start with. Yanni?
Is the government, I mean, this is part of the sort of government central city plan, South Frame, which is there any support from that, given there was an arts trail budget, as I understood, that we tried to get some money put towards, but I'm not sure what happened.
My understanding is that at this time, Otakaro, who are the other partners in it, haven't got funding to put into that, which was why the council had identified it on their Wayfinders Trail as needing some interpretation of that salt district. So we would get 5 panels that would tell the story rather than the 2 we'd originally budgeted for.
And also the cost seems really high. Like, how do we justify that sort of level of expenditure? Like, it seems very expensive.
Sorry, do we have any guidance on sort of interpretation panel?
I've got details of how they break down. A large amount of the money is the research and the writing, copyright use for the materials and the photographs, etc. As I said, they're very large. They're 6 meters square each. And the 6th panel is actually a special glazed box which will contain artifacts that they found on the site during the works to create the laneway, with archaeological interpretation in there. They'll also be lit, so that laneway has got some lighting and it serves as an attraction after dark and at night.
Great, thank you very much. Any further questions on this one?
I want to check, I'm just sort of trying to understand in terms of the laneway. Is that a public laneway? Is that open during the night or 24/7, or is it just?
It's fully accessible public laneway.
Right, because in the photos that we've got, it kind of looks like a private kind of walk-through.
No, it's a public. It's South Frame.
Yeah, so it'll be 24/7.
Yes.
Right, and how resilient will these things be? I mean, given that we've had problems with vandalism of artwork in the city, they look quite susceptible to vandalism.
They seem to have gone to quite a lot of effort to make sure that they've got high quality stainless steel frames in there, and that they've got the anti-graffiti, scratch resistant glass, etc.
Right, are there any further questions?
Well, one thing about that is that they are part of the building, so they're not standalone items which are more susceptible. They are part of a building, which will be therefore occupied at times and will be maintained as part of the building. So they're not standalone items.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. So the original intention was to produce 5 panels. We're funding 2 of them. Does that mean the result will be 5 panels, 2 of which we fund, or does that mean the result will be 2 panels? Like, are they still intending doing the whole 5 and they'll get the funding from elsewhere?
They have got the plan for the 5 panels and the box.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be 5 and we're funding 2.
Yes, it will be basically a partnership with council and the company there to celebrate. And they're not looking at promoting themselves and their business per se. They're looking at the whole history of the Ford motor car. The family are important because without that family, we wouldn't still have them on the site. It is that family connection, and that really is part of the story of that area. But yes, we would fund 2 to get 5 and the box.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so if we no more questions on that one, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, so
a quick overview and then we'll go to questions.
So the next one, that one is the sorry, just get the
Tufty.
So this one is for the Our Stories Project Trust with Otafiti Unlimited School. The students at the school have been looking at NCA history curriculum, and part of their curriculum for the history is to pick an event which is of significance to New Zealanders. The students there have picked on the Springbok tour because of the 40th anniversary coming up this year, and because of the massive impact that it has had to New Zealand and New Zealanders over time. They have reached out to the trust to work with them to help them develop an oral history project to gather stories of people who were around at the time of the tour, either as adults or as children, and for those to be curated and turned into a digital app as well as a website, and for the stories that they gather to be put into the City Council Libraries archives. They will be creating a tool that is specifically designed by young people for young people. So they'll be asking the questions that are the questions that they want to know. They'll be asking, how did this affect you? Why did this affect you? From their own perspective, rather than just taking a recorded history that's available now. I have 2 children who have gone through this particular question in their NCA history, and it's actually really hard to find perspectives that they can relate to. So it will be a resource that will be open not just for that school, but also for other schools and other students to use as part of their NCA curriculum. It's $25,000, which equates to $1,000 each of the 25 students who will be doing the interviews and getting the extra training and skilling that they may need to go on in the future, perhaps to work in this area.
Can I just check before other questions? One thing that we generally don't fund at council is work that is school curriculum based, and so this is part of the NCA curriculum. In what way is the current project over and above the actual curriculum work?
Oh, it's definitely more than that. I mean, it will be a resource that will be available on libraries for students to use, but they're also creating a tool. So they want to place-base a lot of these stories so that students and other people can look at the app and you can actually go out to the particular place and hear interviews with people who have been there. They will be working with Ngatonga Sound and Vision perhaps to get some sound recordings of the protests at the time. So they'll be creating their own website and their own tour that takes you around to these places that will have other uses. But it is also a tool for people who want to come and follow either rugby enthusiasts or people who are really interested in the political history of this area.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll just ask the really obvious question. Will John Minto be involved with the students in the project, given that he's almost world famous for this and he lives in the city?
I haven't been able to ask too much about who they're interviewing. I know that they're looking at creating a list, so I can't imagine they wouldn't be reaching out to John Minto.
Yeah.
But I haven't been given a list of these are the people we'll be interviewing because the students are leading it. It will be also down to the students to decide who they want to interview as well, rather than us necessarily prescribing it.
Right, are there any further actual questions, Jimmy, and then Tim?
Except the Unlimited Discovery School, how about the wider school community, whether they have applied for funding or where about, or from some other source of funding regarding to, to have at least audio the memory, I mean, because you mentioned this expansion to wider the school community.
So the wider school community will be involved. It's 25 students that it is their project. For the wider school community will be involved around perhaps doing some research or promotion. as far as I know, this is stage one. And once they've curated this and they've got the resource there, then there'll be opportunities for other students in the school to perhaps pick up the resource and do other things with it. But it's because the students are designing it, where they want to take it next and what other opportunities there may be to develop on it. I'm not sure. I know that as a pilot project, they're looking at putting in place some guidance and guidelines from this that will be available for other schools who want to take up their own project, or for other community groups or young people to say, we did this, here's the platform, here's how we did it. If you want to set it up, follow this model, and you can put it on the Smart View and the Christchurch NZ apps afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, I look, thank you very much for this. And yeah, I was around at the time. I'm so old, so I do remember it. And the battle at the gasworks, etc. But with regards to the balance of history, is this history is always written by the winners, irrelevant of what you think the winners are, and etc. So I'm just wondering, if you're going to do something, what's the guarantee of a fairness of views?
2 points on that. One is that yes, history is always written with different perspectives, because it's, you know, there's the number 6. Well, is it a 6 or is it a 9? It depends where you're standing, and we can both be right. This is part of gathering the strands. So we're not saying that every strand has to have one perspective only, but we're not saying every strand has to cover multiple perspectives. My understanding is the student want to interview people who were young people at the time. They're very, very keen to interview rugby players who were actually on the field at the time. They're also keen to make sure that they include the impact on Māori and the Māori rights movement, and how that's had an impact looking back now 40 years on, and what that's done there. And I know that one of the stories they wanted to follow up is from some young people at the time who went then out to play rugby on their local rugby fields and found that it was covered with smashed bottles and glass, and how that affected the young people at the time, so how it felt to be young. So I would imagine that they're going to be asking questions that represent what younger people nowadays want to know about the tour, to supplement what they can already find out. So it'd be more enriching what we've got than necessarily being a complete overview that's fully balanced.
Tim, if it helps, my daughter's been through the Springbok tour thing for NCA, and the guide for it is evidence about the 1981 Springbok trip to New Zealand. Comprehensive understanding of different perspectives is shown in the communication and stuff. So it's looking at the whole. Yeah.
And with regards to the earlier question about NCA and its 5.16, the students are also learning editing, etc. So is this what this fund is that's included in this fund? So it's not just about, I mean, it's a fairly ambiguous kind of title, isn't it, for the fund?
Yeah, the fund is covering the professionals who do that work, but rather than the professionals going out and doing the interviews, that they are training the children, the young people, on how to do the interviews. Rather than the professionals handling the materials and the recording equipment and learning and downloading it themselves, they're taking the students with them to do it. So the payment goes to the professional company who will be producing it, but they will be working with the students, so the students have an experience to get a mentorship type experience on how to do it with them.
And my final question, which will also be a question for the next one, is Smart Cities came to us and they gave us a big spiel, and it was really fantastic about, you know, you can go around our city with your phone and just listen to, and have spots that you could listen to parts of history, etc. Is that going to, I mean, is there a link between our future planning for council?
Yes, because Chris Herbert, who is the Our Stories project coordinator for this project, is the lady who would have come to see you to show you the smart cities, and actually on the report you can see her there holding her phone up with the app on it. There. So that is actually Chris. So it will be on smart cities, as well as in the libraries.
Thank you.
Any further questions on that one before we move on to Storytown? No. So a quick rundown on Storytown.
Okay, they'd be bored of me by now. Storytown is a project which has got a huge amount of opportunity to be utilised in the future. It's starting small in the central city, and they are looking at identifying some of the lesser known places around the city which have got stories and heritage associated with them. So they might be looking at things like park benches, or they might be looking at things like lampposts or hitching posts, or sites where things used to be. And they will be putting, they'll be putting QR codes down on those spaces, and by scanning the QR code you can access between 5 and 10 stories that are associated with that place. They're looking at making sure the stories they tell are really diverse and far-reaching, so they may have a piece of literature because they started off as a literary group, and they're now spreading more into heritage. So it might be there's literature, it might be that there's a sound recording, it could be that there's a song that's associated with a particular building, it could be the heritage story, it could be someone's own personal memories of that place. They're working with Ngaitahu Archives to actually start building a repository together of different stories so that it will combine both the stories, and they're also looking at working with some of our other community groups. I'm working separately with some of our migrant communities for them to be included in the project to upload their stories of different places. So it will be very much place-based and very much about diversity of stories. It's starting, as I said, in the central city, but the template is then, if it works, to take that as a model out to other areas and other community groups so that different communities can say, this is my neighbourhood, this is what's important to me in my neighbourhood, and then we can start encouraging other people to gather their stories. So it starts as a depository for existing stories, but with the capacity to start gathering future collections.
Great, thank you. Pauline had a question, and Tim.
I mean, I'm getting a bit of deja vu. Did someone not already pilot this a few years ago? Do you know?
Storytown have done it with literature before, so there have been some with literature. This one is looking specifically at trying to weave together in one place multiple different histories from multiple different groups across the city around that sort of inclusivity conversation.
Right. And they'll manage to cobble together the rest of the funding required?
Yes, they've already, if it's on here, they've already got $10,000 pro bono, and they've gone to RATA as well. And they've also got interest, should the pilot be successful, they've got interest from the Ministry of Culture and Heritage for investment through their innovation fund to take the project out further on. So this would be seeding something that would then move on. And they're looking at, if it works, the model from Christchurch actually going out to other cities across.
Well, I was going to say, is this a first for New Zealand?
This is the model of using QR codes to tell stories and to link to a website is not new, no. But this way of using it to tell multiple layers of heritage from one place and to bring in different things on a website is, I believe, fairly new. They've also, I said, got it backed up with this great New Zealand map. So the plan is further down the line that the map, as Storytown or other people become involved, the map can then cross-link. So you can have people in Auckland who have a story that was written by somebody in Auckland who came from Christchurch, so it can link back. So they want to take it out much bigger, but they're starting in the central city.
That's great.
So when will it be deliverable?
Sorry?
When will they get it off the ground?
They hoped to have launched it during the Word Festival.
So it's ready to go?
It's largely ready to go. They've got a number of the places. What they haven't necessarily got yet in there is the diversity of stories, so they might only have one per place. And they also want to be working with communities to find out some of the hidden stories and which are the places to put them, because otherwise they'll only tell the stories we already know.
Yeah, I think we need to move on though. So Tim, a question from you.
So I just say we should get it onto the newsline when it launches. It'd be fantastic.
I guess, like any large organisation, sometimes they're disjointed and don't talk, and we get those sadly all the time. So with this and the previous one, the apps, the programs, etc., that they're going to be using, I would hope that they are linked in with the museum and library, because and be cross-pollinated as well.
Oh, they'll all sit. All the material from all of them will sit in Christchurch City Libraries. everything comes to our city library. So it can go on the Gibson wall. It will be available for our libraries and for complete public access and complete community use.
So the programs that they are using, or the apps they're creating, the library is happy with those, and smart cities would be included in that as well.
They're all compatible. I don't know the exact jargon, but the platforms can all speak to each other.
I think we need to move on though. So we've heard lots of good detail about each of those 3 applications now. Do I have a mover for those? Melanie, and a seconder for Pauline. Do I have any debate? Yanni.
Yeah, can I just ask that you put the first one separate?
Yep, that's fine.
I mean, while I just want to acknowledge that, this is important. I think also to acknowledge that the south frame is actually not what we thought we were getting, and Otakaro and Sarah and CCDU basically should actually be funding these sorts of things. They put money available for, as I understand it, an arts trail. This council has previously asked if some of that money, I think it was 10 million, could be made available for this sort of activity. And to me, it just doesn't seem right that we're funding this. So, I like what they're doing, but I do think we actually do need Otakaro to fund this fully, given that we were supposed to have a campus-style green way through the South Frame connecting Hagley Park back up to Ara. And obviously that's not what we're getting. We're getting very much a few laneways put in, and I think, it's just incredibly disappointing. But this is a good way to acknowledge the local history. This is art as well as heritage, and I just think Sarah had money available for this sort of thing, and they should be funding it, not us.
Thank you. Jamie?
Thanks. Look, this is budgeted for, but I guess it was budgeted for in a budget that I didn't agree with and voted against. I think the point that I want to make is that there are a lot of tangible things in the city that are regularly missing out. So I think it's a big call to jump ahead of those and spend tens of thousands of ratepayer dollars on the intangible via intangible heritage grants. These projects sound nice. I think I do need to acknowledge that. So I don't inherently dislike them, but I just don't believe that it's fair to shake down ratepayers for this. So I'm voting against all of them.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, in that case, I will put them to the vote. I'll do one at a time. Those in favour of motion 1 to Team Hutchinson Ford, say aye, please. Aye. Anyone against?
No.
Okay, so Catherine, James, Yanni, Phil, and Sam.
Yep, thanks.
Are against. Get those recorded, please. Yes, the anti-car brigade. Yep, and right. Okay.
Doesn't really
So I declare that one carried. The second one, 25,000 to Al Tawhiti Unlimited Discovery School for the Springbok Tour project. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against?
No.
So Tim, Phil, James, and Sam. Is that right, Sam?
And Catherine.
And Catherine.
Yeah, I'm against it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Get those ones recorded. And the last, so declare that one carried. Approved grant of $10,000 for the Storytown Heritage Project. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against?
No.
All right, so Phil,
no,
Catherine, Sam, and James.
Thank you.
Yep, and I declare that one carried. And number 4, the delegation just to do those previously approved ones. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Or anyone against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Right, next we move to some tangible heritage for you, James. We've got some heritage incentive grants for numbers 1 and 2, Taylor's Mistake Batches, but they're in Boulder Bay. So Stone End and Rosie Morn. Aaron's happy to move to get that on the table. Is anyone else going to second? So Jake, do we have, I'll take the report as read. Do we have any questions of staff? Mike.
So could I just make sure that any, grant that is approved is actually goes to batches that have signed lease agreements with the council?
Do they both? I know last time we heard only one had signed.
Yes, we're still waiting for the sign license. Yes, we're still waiting for the sign license to come in from batch Rosie Morn, batch number 2.
I'm happy to vote in favour, but I'd like to ensure that actually any grant is only given on the proviso that actually it is a signed lease.
Yep,
Totally agree. Can we put that in as a
absolutely.
3?
Can we please
I'm happy to support if you've got that.
That in. We might have to add it to both because I'm not quite sure which one was invoted. Yeah. Provided that a lease has been entered into on each of them.
So what's being put in is that's the lease is signed prior to the money being paid. Yep.
So actually it's a license to occupy rather than a lease. It's a license to occupy.
Yeah, it's a license.
Yeah. And Jake and Aaron, you're happy with that change? Yeah.
Could we get some feedback if there are any issues from the owners with regards to the signing of the license of agreement or to occupy?
Yeah, the leasing team are dealing with that.
I realise that, but you're asking for the money.
Yep.
On their behalf.
What I might do is actually get the team who are working on the licenses to maybe just send around a quick memo or something like that, updating on all of that work with the batches, since we're a couple of years on now.
There's been a lot of work on this over the years on these batches, and maybe it's time for a bit of an update on where they all sit.
Yeah, I've just organised that in the background. I've just organised that to come
But I mean, I just can't support money going to people that haven't, but that's saying
so with this it'll be fine. Yeah. So approve 1 and 2 above on the proviso that. Yeah. That'd be great. Right. Is there any debate on this? Tim. Yeah.
I would have preferred the licence to occupy being sorted before this came to council. That would have been a lot cleaner, and I hope in the future that we can make that a signal that would be the priority for us.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Anything else? Right, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Tim? Okay, thank you. I'd like that recorded. I declare that carried. Thank you very much. Right, now we move on to the environmental partnerships.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is the report coming to us following the long-term plan decision on the funding allocation for environmental partnerships, which is fantastic. Mike Davidson's happy to move. Do I have a second to Pauline? Does anyone have any questions? No, in that case, I will ask for debate. In that case, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Excellent report. Excellent report.
Good and positive.
Yep. Next, we move to the community organisation loan scheme application. So I think Sam's here to talk to us about this one. Welcome, Sam. Again, this paper's relatively straightforward. Do we have any questions for Sam on this one? No? Do I have a mover? Jamie? Seconder? Catherine? That took a minute. Okay, no questions at all? No? Any debate? No? In that case, I will put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Declare that carried. Thanks, Sam. Excellent discussion there.
Another one.
Right. Next one down. So, discretionary response fund applications for Pacific People's Trust and Taylor's Mistake Surf Lifesaving Club. We'll deal with the Pacific People's Trust first. So, did you have anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, but happy to take questions. And Marie Byrne is on Zoom to answer questions about this first application.
Okay. So, just questions on the first application at this point. Mike?
I don't have a question as such. I don't need to ask anything, but I would like to signal an amendment to actually increase the amount from 20 to 25.
Okay, would you like to move it? rather than amend?
Oh, no, why not? Oh, could I move it, but change it to 25,000.
You're just moving one?
Yep.
Okay. And Pauline's going to second that. Okay. Any commentary from staff on that? No.
Marie?
Pauline?
Yeah, well, I was just going to.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Good. Pauline?
Yeah, I was just going to, noting this is a brand new group. So they've been running since earlier in the year, and they have obtained RATA funding as well already.
Yes, it's a newly formed group. However, they have been running informally for some time and supporting Pacifica and Māori youth in the Christchurch area. So that's why it comes through as quite a recent group. This funding also will allow them to really cement themselves in to apply for other funding as well.
Great, thank you.
Right, thank you. And any further questions? No, I was going to do these separately, I think. So that one's been moved and seconded. Do I have any debate? Pauline?
Yeah, look, I just think this is a really great project, particularly because it's aiming to not just address a minority group and bring them up to speed with other organisations, but also helping to redress the imbalance of the overrepresentation in the unemployment statistics. So it's specifically targeting one group, and I think I'll be watching this with great interest. Where do I look up there? To get their report back in a year or so to see how they're going, because I think I'd like to congratulate them on this initiative. It's wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mike?
Thanks. Just very quickly, and I echo what Pauline said. I think this is a really good initiative, totally support it, and I think we should try and give it every chance to succeed. So that's why I moved that the increase went up to 25. Yeah.
Thanks. Yanni?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to support this. I think it's really interesting that as part of our Strengthening Communities strategy refresh, we have specifically identified that Pacifica people are an area that we need to increase our support to. So I think this aligns with that recognition. But also, just if you look at the things around the Pacific Business Collective, and again, I just wanted to encourage councils to think about our council companies and the difference that they could make with some of these communities. When you look at what's happening up in Auckland, for example, with the Southern Initiative, which I've previously circulated. So, collectively we can achieve a lot more if we work together to improve the outcomes for those in our community. And I think this group, from reading of it, seems like it's got some pretty good people involved, and I appreciate that staff have actually listed who is on the decision matrix, which is good. So I strongly support this, and I think we do need to think about how else we can support it, not just with funding, but also with the resources that we have across our council companies and our council family.
Thank you. Any further debate? No, in that case, I'll put that one. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? No, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. So next one is the application for the Taylor's Mistake Surf Lifesaving Club towards paving and asphalt. We've had some correspondence from them and there's been some discussion. So I was wondering whether there's any further information at this point.
Yes, so I did look a little bit further into the application. The Christchurch City Council donated the plants. That was part of the landscaping in their original application. So they applied for $75,000 and then they reduced it down to $23,600. And the regional parks have also funded the barrier arms into the car parking area there as part of the car park project.
Are those barrier arms on the leased land or are they on council?
I think they're on the boundary, so between the car park and then the leased land that the Taylor's Mistake Surf Lifesaving Club is on.
Right.
And I've just one other quick update. The regional parks are doing car park renewal work out there, so they're going to meet Malcolm from the club tomorrow to see if it's reasonable to include their work and part of the car park renewal work as well.
Yeah. Right, any further questions?
Sorry, just so I understand, there's a very good chance this might get paid for by
someone else or something else? Is that
Not necessarily something else, but there's been a request to look at whether it would make sense for maybe council to do that work as part of the car parking contract,
Right.
rather than for them to do it separately.
Okay.
Based on a lot of the hard surface contracting work is done through a panel agreement, which the parks are getting very good prices for at the moment. So we may be able to get it done for considerably less. We'll just have to see. Part of the problem with where they're wanting to asphalt is where they wash their boats and motors and things out. So it'll depend on what's required for that.
So sorry, it will happen, or
they're meeting tomorrow to see if it's reasonable to include it in the existing council job to do the car park.
Okay, thank you.
Are people of a mind to lay this on the table until we work out what's happening?
Yeah.
So do we have a motion to lay it on the table? Procedural, so Leanne and Pauline seconding that? Okay. So there's a motion to lay it on the table. Sorry, Mike, was... Okay. Because you've seconded the thing. It's not an amendment though. Yeah.
It could come back to council by next week.
Yeah.
If we get a
if we get an update, so we'll bring this then. Yeah. And report back to council. Yeah. Or the committee. Yeah. Yeah. Whichever is first. Yeah. Excellent.
The job's been done.
That's the one. Okay. So there's no debate. There's no debate on a procedural motion. So can I please just have the vote on the procedural motion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Declare that carried. So we'll get that one to be brought back following the other work being done. That's great. Thank you very much, everyone, on that. Thanks, Sam. So now we move to the vacant sites property owner rates incentive for activations. It's a very long and wordy title. Not particularly easy to read.
Oh, yes.
So welcome, Brindy. Welcome, Carolyn. This is something we've dealt with in the past. It looks like it's expanded a little bit. Do we have, is there anything additional to add to the report?
No, it's all in there. Yep.
In that case, do we have any questions? No questions. That means it must mean the report's pretty clear. Do I have a mover for the rates incentives? Andrew? A seconder? Melanie? Aaron?
Just clarify one thing, for a question if I may, sorry, I realise it's a little late. Just to clarify one thing around, I think it was the under 2. So this now means that it's not just vacant land, that if someone's got like a vacant store that's for lease, they can put some sort of activation in and then make the claim?
The incentive has included that since the beginning of its inception, but what we're doing now is we're focusing on Central City core ground floor activation. So we'll consider some exterior sites for the incentive in the Central City core on a case-by-case basis, but we're aiming to really focus it on the empty shops, because they need a bit of support there to get those activated.
Right. Okay. So, and you think this will achieve more?
It does. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
That's great. Thank you very much. Any further questions, Yanni?
The idea that this should just be focused on the central city and there's other areas in the suburbs, like what's the process for those areas to get support?
Right. So it is suburban areas are eligible, both for exterior sites and interior sites. So the only real shift is the focus in the core on interior sites, less on exterior sites. It continues for suburban areas as it has done. So the support is citywide with this incentive.
That's in the report itself, Yanni, rather than the recommendations.
Yeah. So, but in terms of when I looked at the chart, what was interesting is just the lack of suburban, like on the table 1.
Yep.
Most of it just looks central city. Is there what sort of promotion have we done outside of the central city to make people aware of this one?
So there has been a fairly good split over the years for suburban and central city. At the moment, Life in Vacant Spaces is the primary user of the tool. So they will respond to property owners who may wish for their land to be used, or they may approach property owners who may wish for the land to be used. So that's the extent of the promotion really that we do use with this tool, and it's through Life in Vacant Spaces.
And this may be one thing where councillors are out in their communities and they see a site and they're able to actually sort of broker that as well, and actually, you know, make sure that people are aware.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions on this one? So we've got mover and seconder. Any debate? No, in that case I'll put the motion. All in favour please say aye. Aye. Any against? I declare that carried. Thank you very much. And we will close the meeting with a karakia from Councillor Davis.
Unahia te pō whiri marama, te mokia te ao whatu tangata. Tai ki runga, taita ki raro, tātai ahoro. Homea huia tai.
Kia ora. Thank you. See the meeting closed.